Hello, welcome to another Pro Tips, where today we have a special edition because we actually have a guest here. And we're going to talk all about basically the Lansweeper catalog, what it means, what it does, and how it plays into Lansweeper and the product, and how it makes basically what you use every day, how it makes it better, and how it can make it even better in the future as well. So with me is Carlo. Carlo, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, or talk about your background, where you came from, and what you're currently doing at Lansweeper?
Hello everyone, this is Carlo Medas. I am one of the original co-founders of Fing, and I've been working with Fing since 2016, initially as co-founder and then CTO, and I've been driving the technology part of Fing. And in 2020, Lansweeper acquired Fing, and I've been able to focus even more on the technology part, because Fing was born as a consumer company. So we built mobile applications for million users in order to help consumers recognize their devices that they could have in their smart homes. And with the Lansweeper acquisition, I moved more and more to the engineering and technology part. And I've been able to focus more and more on what we started to build when we were in a startup. And
Yeah, so Fing is really more focused on the consumer side. It's a mobile app that basically anyone that's also watching can just download on their phone. You can run it on your home network, see which devices are on there, even block network access to devices and things like that.
Yeah, it's available on the Fing desktop or with the Fingbox, which is the embedded device that we built. And but no matter if you're using the mobile app or the Fing desktop or the Fingbox, the basic concept is that we do leverage some crowdsourced device recognition in order to give you much more than just the IP address and MAC address without any credential.
Yep. And that will play nicely later on into when we talk about, okay, how does Fing, or the device recognition part of Fing, come into play when we talk about Lansweeper's data, etc. Maybe the first topic to start off with, because that's kind of what I talked about in the introduction as well, is the whole catalog. I think I've mentioned it a few times in previous videos or videos about Lansweeper that cover more things like credential-free device recognition, and we sometimes mention, okay, it uses the catalog, but I don't think we've ever really given a good explanation of what the catalog really is. So maybe you can give a better explanation of, okay, what is the Lansweeper Data Catalog or the catalog?
Yeah, so let's say that when you work with data, with network device data, the first step is to normalize. And this is a common step, no matter if you are doing the credential-free device recognition or if it is credential-full data like Lansweeper is acquiring and discovering from the networks. So first step is normalizing the data. Once the data is normalized, that is the moment that you can bring the value by creating a product catalog. So a catalog of brands, hardware, and then operating system and software. Once you start adding more and more metadata to the catalog, then you are able to actually bring much more value to the simple information of the device, brand, and model name, because then you can add information like lifecycle information or vulnerability information, and then you can make the data become actionable.
And so really one of the first parts, if I remember correctly, that Lansweeper really started using, and when we acquired Fing, one of the first things we also did, and Fing was already doing, was also leveraging the catalog basically to provide it to other companies as well, because Fing is already providing that service to a couple of hardware manufacturers. I don't know if you know which ones we're currently supporting already.
Yes, so the biggest one is Netgear. Since a couple of years ago, every Netgear router that is going in the market is leveraging our device recognition technology and the catalog as well, in order to enrich the user experience.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense, because a lot of times those devices have a lot of MAC addresses, but they don't have any additional information. And that's where then the recognition comes in, that we're able to match basically a MAC address to a device, model, make, and hopefully more information as well,
Yes, yes.
as much as we can. Okay, let's maybe switch to what the catalog really supports. What does the catalog support in Lansweeper at the moment? Because I already mentioned credential-free device recognition. So obviously it plays a big part there, where we do the same thing as I just mentioned, where Netgear, for example, does it with taking a MAC address. If we pick up a MAC address, we can enrich it using the catalog. What other parts currently in Lansweeper
So the
use it?
So that we started to build a catalog in Finger when it was just used in order to enrich credential-free device recognition information. So very lightweight information.
Mhm.
But then when we were acquired, we joined forces, and then we really combined our forces in two directions. First of all, in order to normalize any information that is in Lansweeper. So not only the lightweight credential free, but also every credential full information, brand name, manufacturer, model, and then operating system name, version, and then of course also with regard to the software, but we will see later maybe. And so we went on with our approach of the crowdsourcing data. Then we crunch it. And on top of that, we have a two-phased approach. One is manual labeling, and the other is leveraging a big data lake and doing machine learning on top of that in order to make it scale. And so we started attaching more and more information to this catalog. And for example, what is currently used by Lansweeper? Let's start with the very simple things like the brands. So every manufacturer name can be coming with dirty names, dots, ink, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, something that's very common, and we also see that, and people also recognize that from things like when they used to create reports in Lansweeper, and you want to, for example, I know a very simple one is Dell, for example. You have Dell Inc. I think now, even especially with the way that those brands even branch out and split up consumer from enterprise. Often you have like Dell Enterprise,
Yeah.
and then you have Dell Enterprise Inc., and you have Dell Regular and Dell Inc. And I mean, there'll be a lot more of those kind of examples from reporting, basically, where there's a big problem because you have to take into account all of those things when you create a
Exactly.
report.
When you want to aggregate and build a report, then if there is no normalization, you cannot go on. And so when we go instead to hardware, for example, so to device models, not only you can normalize the name that usually if you are deep scanning it from SNMP or from another protocol, it can come with different names. But maybe sometimes it comes with a full market name, sometimes it comes with a model code. So the normalization has the purpose of making it unique, and then having a unique entry in the catalog of the products, and then we can start attaching information like lifecycle. So when was the product released, and when is it going end of life or end of support?
Yeah, so I think currently, so we've already talked about the make and model. That's more the credential-free device recognition. So that's one area where we basically use the catalog today. Lifecycle information, which is available in Lansweeper Cloud. You'll be able to see there under your Windows devices. We can actually just go ahead and go over it just so that we can show it as well. If I switch tabs here, so make and model is already kind of a thing that gets normalized through credential-free device recognition. Unfortunately, in this case, it's a VMware, so
Yeah, it's not really.
it's not the best example, but
Yeah, but this is a very good example in terms of the operating system, which is maybe the next topic that we have.
yeah. So I mean, we already have the operating system at the top, but we normalize that to then basically, because you can see here the operating system here is written differently, structured differently than the one that was at the top. And then you can also see, like you mentioned, that we're able to match lifecycle data to that to be able to see when it was general availability and the support end of life. And that also makes it a lot easier to report on. I know myself personally because, as you know as well,
Yes.
I make a lot of this type of reporting where I basically have to make kind of custom queries to say that, okay, if the build of an OS is this specific build number, then that means the end of life is that date. and I have to basically do that for all of the build, well,
Yeah.
pretty much all of the build numbers to get a good overview. Something which can take quite some time, and I know a lot of people that use our product don't have the time to spend
Yeah.
a day, 2 days, 3 days, depending on how
Mm-mm.
confident they are with creating queries to create such a report. And with this in place, and I've already used it a number of times in all of kind of the end of life kind of blogs, etc., that we send out. We always attach a cloud report now as well. And
Yeah.
if I take a look at how much time it takes me to create, the end of life report for Windows in cloud compared to on-prem, I can do it in cloud in, let's say, 10, 15 minutes, where on-prem it takes me 2, 3 days
Yeah, of
to
course.
really get the full overview of all the operating systems with their end of lives. So really, it helps a lot there. So thank you for making it easier.
Yeah, well, thanks to me, but even more to the catalog team, because
Yeah,
as
yeah,
a matter of fact, we have a team of engineers and data scientists that are continuously checking over the catalogs. And because of our crowdsourced approach, we get notifications every day of what is new in the catalog and needs to be mapped. Of course, there is machine learning labeling, early labeling the stuff, but anyway, we always want to also manually acknowledge the most important new products that are coming, new operating systems that are coming. So yeah.
And then I think, it also lists here security insights.
Well, yeah, when you normalize and you have the catalog, another very important data point that you can link to the operating system, to the hardware, and even more to the software is the CPE, the NIST CPE, which is the basic information that allows us to bind the operating system or the software to the CVE, which are the vulnerabilities.
Because I think if you go to the NIST website and go to any vulnerability at the bottom, you'll see that they have a CPE code, which basically is kind of a combination of usually things like what operating system, what version of the operating system, what build number of that operating system. Well, NIST is not very good in adding the build number of operating systems, but
Yeah, even if I have a very good news, because starting from this year, January this year, they started to change the approach with regard to Windows operating system.
Oh, really? So now they add the
Now we have it in the operating system, which is a good news, but also a challenge, because we must be able to create an engine which is strong enough to also support the legacy vulnerabilities.
Yes.
So
Because legacy vulnerabilities are still more difficult in that way, simply because NIST didn't create a good CPE really. It often, from what I remember at least, what they used to do is they just gave you the operating system version or the operating system name, the major version, and then the kind of let's say minor version. So it would be like for Windows, it would be okay. It's Windows 10 21H1.
exactly.
But as long as it doesn't give you the build, it's pretty much useless information.
Exactly.
Because you have so many builds in the 20H1 edition that, okay, you don't even know if something is vulnerable or not, simply because, if they are on a higher build than the one that it was fixed in, then it's not vulnerable anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big issue. Going back to the conversation of the catalog and vulnerability. So where does the catalog play into the kind of the security insights that we have in the product at the moment?
So we mentioned already the lifecycle information, which is part of the risk insights. But then with regard to the security insights, the catalog is used as a main entry point in order to provide the CPE for every operating system and software, which then is correlated by our engine in order to cross-link to the vulnerabilities, to the CVEs. But even more than that, because we are going to introduce very soon also the integration with the MSRC. So, and this is exactly for the reasons in order to overcome the limitations of NIST that you just explained. So in the next release, we are going to have not only the NIST information, but also the MSRC integration. This means that the number of false positives that we got in the early phase of our vulnerability product will drop dramatically, and we will provide very reliable information with regard to vulnerabilities.
Which is, very important. As people can also see, on the screen I have here, let's say it says 6,700 vulnerabilities. quite a challenge to go through something like that. If you have a similar environment with thousands of vulnerabilities, it's not an easy thing to get started. And you know, especially since okay, they're all critical. Okay, which one do you start with
Exactly.
first?
Exactly.
There's probably quite a few false positives in there. So being able to reduce that would be big. And in regards to the MSRC, just for the people that don't know, that would be the Microsoft's Microsoft
Microsoft
SaaS, Microsoft MS,
remediation.
Microsoft Response Center, I think, something like that. Anyway, it's Microsoft's basically incident response
Exactly.
website or part, and they have an API as well, right?
Yeah, it's a live feed where you can retrieve all information about their hot fixes and patches with regard to the operating systems and also to the software. So we built some automation so that our engine is connected in real time and cross-validating the vulnerability from NIST together with the MSRC information. And we are going to add more and more sources in the near future.
And I think especially the Microsoft source will be very interesting to also take a look and, at least for me personally, take a look and see how we can, if there's any chance that we can also take a look at evolving Patch Tuesday and how that works. Because currently, still Patch Tuesday is kind of still done on in an analog way. I create it every month where we specifically look for certain patch numbers. Maybe there's a way to kind of make like a Patch Tuesday V2 or something like that in a new way where we utilize the security insights that we have. And in a more automated way, so that I don't have to stay up every month.
Definitely.
One night every month, I stay up late to create Patch Tuesday for everyone. So
wow. Okay.
um,
We will be able to give you more sleep.
Good thing.
Yeah, because the first phase of MSRC was to really connect to the feed and to get rid of the false positives. But then, of course, we are getting information about the patches. So not only we know if you are on a fixed version, but also what would be the correct fixed version that you could upgrade to.
And also makes it a lot easier and then to also identify and find out whether like out of band patches are being released, because it does happen quite often. It happens that Microsoft with their updates breaks things. They only figure it out a few days after the patches have gone live, and then they have to kind of release an emergency patch to fix things. That's something that we do not cover with kind of the Patch Tuesday reports that I create, but it's something that we could start covering in the future once we have that data in it as well. So we've talked now about basically CDR, the lifecycle information, vulnerabilities. We haven't really talked about how that is going to, well, some things we've talked about, but how it's going to continue and go forward. Maybe we can run through the different parts again, and maybe you can give some more insight. Okay, what are the next steps for this? Starting with CDR, we currently do things like model make, and it's all based on well, we do it with a combination of data that we use to get that information, but it's mainly MAC address. Is there anything else that we're working towards, that we're looking into for the future to use more data points or normalize more data on that side?
So with regard to CDR, yeah, we have a very good coverage of protocols because we have, of course, the MAC address, but then we have DHCP, and we have Bonjour, ZeroConf, Universal Plug and Play, and we have SNMP also in the CDR part. Of course, it's much better covered in the credentials scan, because in enterprise networks you have the credentials, but it's the same concept, let's say the same protocol. And also after the acquisition, we started working together with the Lansweeper discovery teams. So as a matter of fact, we joined forces. So we implemented a number of deep scan protocols without credentials. So for example, even the HTTP servers, currently the headers are scanned and then analyzed by the credential field device recognition. The same for SSL certificates and SSH and Telnet and FTP banners. When there is no credential, the banner is sent, and then the machine learning is, well, we always do some manual labeling, But then the strongest part of our CDR is the machine learning, which is leveraging all other data points of information that come, and then self-learning and improving the knowledge. So even these deep scan fingerprints are very, very strong, I would say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are there any protocols that we're looking into, or any new things that we're looking into at the moment?
At the moment, with regard to CDR, we have been brainstorming about some possible protocol that can be useful if you are not an endpoint. So, because currently both the Fing approach and Lansweeper approach was in 90% of the cases just as an endpoint in the network.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to really improve the recognition and also, yeah, I would say cope better with the recent initiative of the macro-randomization of the personal devices, then you would need to step into some passive discovery, always known. So like in a spam port or in the router, and that would improve even more the recognition. So this is under investigation now in order to bring the product to the next level.
Okay. In regards to the next point, then, life cycle. I know at the moment we're still kind of fleshing that out, because I don't know what the current coverage is for life cycle, because I think correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be, but we're currently only looking at things operating system related.
Yes. So we started with hardware, so with devices, and the coverage is rather good with regard to enterprise devices. With regard to consumer devices, it really doesn't make any sense unless in order to report on the release date and be able to know how young the product is. But then usually consumer devices do not have any end of life. So with regard to, for example, I don't know, Cisco or HP, Aruba routers or switches, we have an amazing coverage on those. And then with regard to the operating systems, yeah, there is an always running activity on our side in order to cover every new release, every new operating system that is coming. And that these two are already integrated in Lansweeper Cloud, fully integrated and available in the reports.
Okay. And I think for lifecycle specifically, something that's coming up or something that is next would then be, if we look at what data do we have in Lansweeper and think about lifecycle, I think one of the logical conclusions or next steps would be looking at software as well, and linking software to lifecycle. Is that something that we're working on or that we're investigating?
Yeah, definitely. Because I believe last year we released the software normalization, which is, well, as a matter of fact, we have been working on rebooting the software normalization in a better way because we wanted to improve the angle, the overview. We want to normalize the software not only for the vulnerability use case, but also for the lifecycle, for the IT asset management use case. So currently in the product, we are surfacing the tip of the iceberg of the software normalization that we have been working on. And during this year and also during next year, we will gradually release more and more features related to the software normalization. And one of these, of course, is very relevant. It's the software lifecycle information.
Yep. And I think if we look at vulnerability specifically, I think we already kind of covered what's next for that. You mentioned the Microsoft source that we will be adding in the coming year as well as looking at other additional sources. I think that's mainly one of the big steps for the security insights is really adding more and more sources so that we can get the accuracy up and as high as possible on that side.
Yeah, and also let's say that as you mentioned, looking at this example, the main challenge when you look at this screen is I have too many criticals where I should start from.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the focus that we are going to have in the next 6 months, 9 months in the product.
Yeah, that's indeed that's a product focus. Whereas, yeah, on the catalog side, it's more focused on getting more data sources there. But on the product, yeah, we definitely want to make it easier
Yeah,
to be able to
yeah,
see and filter through which vulnerabilities should I tackle
exactly.
first.
And this relates very much to adding more sources because,
Mm,
for example, by leveraging the MSRC, but also the CISA, I don't know the
CISA, yeah.
CISA, okay, the correct pronunciation in English, CISA, that is really something that is enriching the information of the vulnerability because by, for example, linking to CISA, you can tell if the vulnerability is exploited in the wild or not.
Yeah, because
So,
they always have their list of actively exploited vulnerabilities that they update every so often, which yeah indeed would be a great addition to that data to really know, okay, which ones are on the CISA list of exploited
yeah,
vulnerabilities, and you could prioritize that as well, to start working on those first basically. Um, I believe that CISA as well. It's pretty sure it's a government entity,
yeah,
and they also have deadlines for each of those vulnerabilities where they say, okay, all government bodies need to be, protected against this vulnerability by that date. Uh, I don't know how strict the regulation on that is and how well
I see.
they actually check on that. I think it's more kind of guidelines that they actually do checking on it. But I know that they do have those deadlines. So it is, for the people that work in government, that need to follow those guidelines and those deadlines. It would be very useful to have that added as well. Currently, obviously, you could always. I think we already have. If we go to vulnerabilities, that we also show links to kind of the official pages. Where you're able
Yeah,
to find a lot of information, but that's also something where the more sources we have, the more relevant information we're able to add to these pages as well, and give links to, for example, CISA, where you're able to find all of the information, basically.
exactly. Yeah.
All right. That will be something for the next episode. So next time, I think we're going to talk a bit more about software normalization, because that's kind of a big component on its own. And then we can show a few things as well in Lansweeper that relate to software normalization. So that's all for next time. So I hope you enjoyed kind of this deeper dive into the catalog and kind of getting, I think it's really the first time that we've really discussed the catalog in more detail, and give some more information on what that actually is and how it's used in Lansweeper. As you might have guessed from and seen in the conversation, it's something that's very important to our product, something that adds a lot of value. So we're definitely excited to continue on it and getting more value out of it. So I hope you enjoyed all of this. And for the rest of the conversation, you can check back next time in the next episode.